You got a lot of notes?
Yeah.
What do you think happens? Yeah. Of course I get a lot
Oh,
of
that
notes.
makes me feel great.
Oh, pages of notes.
Because I'm always on a notes club and like, fucking John Wells doesn't get it.
Oh, it never stops.
I'm
Never stops.
I'm sorry for you and selfishly happy.
I'm Mikey O'Connell with The Hollywood Reporter, and this is the Producer Roundtable. Among your series here today, we have suicidal ideation, child-on-child murder, jokes about terminal cancer, and perhaps the most graphic birth scene ever caught on camera, but definitely television. For any of you, though, what was the last scene you wrote or filmed that made you or your collaborators genuinely nervous?
You know, we were nervous to write the scene in our last episode of Hacks where Deborah gives up her white whale. Sorry for the spoiler if you haven't seen it. I know.
What?
We were really nervous to write that because it was something that we knew we were building to for 4 seasons, so we really wanted to stick the landing, but we also didn't know how people would take it, you know? We often say that she can get away with literal murder and people cheer her on. So to give up something, even though it was selfless and hopefully, you know, character growth, was a scary thing to write. And also we were trying to wrap our arms around all the changes that have been happening in the industry. And so to try and do that in a way that was both funny, but touching and hopefully coherent was challenging and scary.
You wrote yourself in as a very complicated character on your own show.
Yeah, well, I didn't write it for me, but then I did play it.
Yeah.
But when I wrote it, it wasn't with me in mind. So, but then you realize that is a shortcut to playing it because you're like, I do know what this is because I have written it. But yeah, I mean, look, we in our show there's suicide and death, and you have to be careful writing that stuff, and especially in a comedy. But I don't know the answer to it. You do a lot of research and you read lots of first-hand accounts of other people who have been through the things that they've been through, and it's also based on people we know and things like that. And you hope that you are writing it with the right amount of empathy and not being callous with a serious thing, and then just hope for the best.
I mean, you have to have something.
I think we were mostly concerned about, we wanted to show what it's really like to be an emergency room physician or health provider and to have that experience. And we didn't know if the audience would keep watching. It's very graphic, but it's also very real. And so we were just concerned, would the audience actually go along for the ride? So we titrated it, you know, to use the medical term, where it's not as graphic at the beginning, although some people would disagree. And it becomes more so because you become more able to accept what's going to happen. And it leading to the birth, which we said is a gift to all women because they should look at all their children and husbands and say, that's what I did for you. Yeah, so, but no, we discovered the audience.
I make my husband watch it every morning.
I think in your show it's interesting because we see horrible things happen and graphic stuff, but the most upsetting thing was the woman being punched because we care about it. Like it's a much smaller thing, but that was the bit that upset me the most.
Well, but to your point, I think so much of it is research and making certain that you're actually telling the stories based on what you've learned in the research that you do, so that you're being honest to the people who've been through these experiences. And so, you know, that was just talking to a lot of nurses and healthcare people who have been damaged. There's actually new legislation to try and deal with that, federal legislation, because there's been so much violence since COVID towards healthcare workers.
I think that one of the key elements is honesty. For our show in particular, I think Jack got rather frightened when I said, at the end of the first episode, we know it's him that's done it. So then it's not a who done it, but it's more of a why. And then it was about looking into the aspects of what's made this child commit this horrific act, and then kind of exploring the possibilities that we're all slightly accountable, you know, with respect to parents, the school system, society, the government, and then something which, yeah, we're all of a certain age, that we never had or our parents never had to cope with, was the internet. And that can also parent and educate our children just as much, if not more, to be honest, than what we can. So it was kind of navigating that. And also we weren't a normal linear show. We were going to jump about along the timeline that we set it in. So I think that was that was a bit scary when I said to Jack, oh, no, we know he's done it. We see it at the end. And he was like, we see it at the end of the first. I went, yeah. We show the kid that we've got him on camera. So I think that was a little bit frightening.
I put off writing the last episode of Dying for Sex for a really long time, I think just because I didn't want her to actually die. And I felt like I had some sort of control over that for a second. And then it got weird and people were like, you need to write that.
It's shooting tomorrow.
Yeah, like you can tell by the tone of the email. It's like the sentences get shorter. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's like to write not nervous, but yeah, that was particularly daunting just because I didn't want the character to die, and I really didn't know kind of like where to find the comedy in it and in a way that made sense. So it was, yeah. But then I don't know. I mean, I'm more nervous now than I am writing.
But your research though, because can I just say that was my wife won't watch it, but I watched it, and I want that last breath. That was so beautiful. It was so beautifully written, so beautifully played. But you caught that's when she shared to me, because my wife was there when her mum passed away, and she watched the mum take that final breath, and you described it, and I love the way she describes it. But then when she goes through it, like it was beautiful. It was so beautiful, and I swear to God, the tears were just streaming down my face because I was there and I witnessed it, and it felt like we were allowed to watch this precious experience. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I hope my wife will watch it, but I don't think she ever will because she can't, because she's been there, and it'll just bring all them emotions back. But it was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing it. It was gorgeous. Yeah.
It's too early to cry on this. Thank you so much. No, I mean, the breath was something that and Michelle was just so incredibly open and brave, and just, you know, we were like really working on that because we wanted to get that right.
You got it right.
Similarly, we, spoiler alert, killed Steve Carell on our show. And I think just because Tina Fey and Lang Fisher and I created the show, and our whole room, we're all comedy writers, we had never written a death, and kind of navigating because we wanted it to be funny. So, navigating after they find out he dies, and then they go to tell his ex-wife who's getting oral sex from her boyfriend, and then now they have to tell her, and she has this heartbreaking reaction, and now the boyfriend's playing Candle in the Wind on his guitar. It's kind of like, this is gonna be, when you first wrote it, when you shoot it, and then when you first see the cut, you're like, oh my God, there's so many like left and then right and then left turns. Are people just gonna be like, I hate you, go away, what is this? Is disgusting, what is this? So it's scary to kind of take a leap tonally, but when it works and it's funny, it's like very satisfying as a viewer too.
And I think if it's human.
Yes, that's
if there's
the
a sense
key of
that
it, right?
you sense the realness in it, you sense the truth in it, and that's what really works.
I mean, tonally, I think my show, Running Point, is maybe different.
Died on that.
I was just thinking when I watch Adolescence, like there's so many similarities, and it came out around the same time. Well, I was going to say, the fear you have when you do a show like that about sports is just
the fear of the like hard work and getting it right. Because basketball fans are, you know, like I've worked with shows for teenagers and worked with shows with about the Indian diaspora. And if you get it wrong, people will pounce. And I have a very fragile ego and I hate criticism. And so in doing a show like about a basketball team where people have to do basketball speak all the time and they have to sound legitimate, it takes an enormous amount of research. I'm not like having suicidal ideation like other characters in other shows.
I've never seen basketball, and I watched the show, and it sounded totally legit.
Okay, so I'm so happy. So the terror of getting it wrong. So the terror of getting it wrong, you know, I think that is, I am like to do things that are easy, and I like to do shows about ambitious women who try to date and get married and feel acceptance. And that had been my career up until this show. And now it's like, oh, I have to learn this new skill, which was uncomfortable, but worth it.
Liz, I read that one point FX asked you to pull back on the male full frontal.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Just slightly. The just slightly is what interests me. First of all, what does just slightly look like? And since this is your first series that really explores sex, what surprised you about working on a show that wades so deeply into like intimacy and nudity?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to write Sex on the Dropout and then was told that any sex for legal reasons had to be good sex. And I was like, I don't know how to write a scene where they're like, this is so good.
Do you mean the quality of the sex is good or that it...
The lawyers were like, it has to be good sex. And I was like, I don't even
No one
want
can
to think
regret it.
about what that means.
Everyone leaves satisfied. They shake on it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was daunting. I actually went to a Zoom in the Writers Guild. They had a Zoom on like how to write sex scenes.
You're like with your notebook.
I like took notes and I put, it was incredible. It was really useful. And because I just like didn't know how to do it. It was like, you know, just be really clear, be really clinical, like kind of just say exactly what you want to see. And I did it. I was blushing a little, but I did it. It was really important to me that the sex never felt like it was taking you out of the story. I remember watching Normal People and just loving the way that I felt like that was so integrated into kind of what was happening in the story and what was happening for those characters. So I always wanted, if there was sex in the show, I wanted it to be, you know, you want to learn something new by the end of the sex scene, like in a musical theater. Like it's a musical. That's how I always approach sex. Big musical number, yeah.
Yeah. Big Finish is good. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I did 7 years of a network show where when they told us, I think it was like year 4 or 5 that we were allowed to say dick not as an object but as an insult. It was like there were cheers in the writers' room. We were just like, oh my God, like that's such a great comedy word. It has like that heart. So this was really new, and I was amazed by how FX was just open, and and I actually felt proud that we got them to a place where FX was like, you need to pull back. So that meant counting the frames that we saw the penis, and specifically
Frame by frame.
yeah, and because that's what American values are.
What's the maximum number of frames?
It was never like specifically said to me, but it was like a kind of like, let's just start taking them out and see where we go. It was specifically when the penis sprouted butterfly wings and took off flying. And there was a moment that we had to cut that I like will regret to my end days, where the penis is like flying towards the camera and then sort of like in a flirty way, like kind of like, and then like flutters away, and then we had to cut that. So that
You
was,
still have that footage somewhere,
yeah.
don't you? I mean, it's got to
I
go.
Release the
don't,
cut.
but yeah,
For the uncut.
yeah,
version.
that was really
Release
funny.
it. Thank you.
My follow for everyone was going to be about executive notes in general, but now I'm very curious about legal notes considering the enjoyable sex comment. But what is the funniest or most absurd or infuriating note you've ever gotten from an executive?
Not to be a kiss up, but I feel like legal notes are often worse because at least executive notes are often, even if the note's bad, you can read what's going on under. There's something they're not understanding. There's something that's not resonating. So whatever, let's think about it. And usually, even if you're annoyed by it, you're like, it ends up being better when you talk about it for an extra day. I feel like we had a penis situation. We had a legal thing.
The name of my next show.
Your autobiography, a penis situation. We had a thing where we had a joke that was, at the end of an episode, the friends come over Anne's hotel room and they turn on her TV and like a really graphic porn is playing, really fast. And we were told, but by our studio that we cannot, it's a studio rule, we cannot license pornography. We never do. You will have to shoot it yourself. And I was like, what?
I've gotten that note multiple times.
I'm like a Catholic girl. I'm not shooting a porno. Like, what are you talking about? And but it was really like we went back and forth that it was like a legal thing that it's like, and it's coming from a good place where it's like a lot of these porn that you license. It's like we don't know if they're totally consensual and what the sure. But we went back and forth, and then finally there was a list of kind of like on the
Legitimate.
Legitimate. There was a guy who was a producer that they had some sort of relationship with that they're like, look through his title. So while we were shooting in Puerto Rico, just anytime you'd see me on set that we weren't shooting, I was just like, they're like, what are you doing? Get away from the set. And I was like, no, I got to find it.
But did you have to pick the scene as well that you wanted?
I had to pick the scenes.
Okay.
Did I want,
no, I mean the scenes that you wanted to show on the telly when you're in a hotel room. I've seen it, yeah.
Yes.
So you had to go, I want that.
I want that one. And what the codes
as it's happening at that point.
Yeah. So
nice.
I watched this gentleman's body of work, and that was the best one. And the lawyer was like, we've never, like, we've like had this come up on a lot of shows before, and they always end up filming it themselves. And this was at Universal. They were like, this will change a lot of things certainly for the gentleman who made all this pornography. He's so excited.
I like that you keep calling him gentleman. You're really like, I want to protect his integrity. This man who shot so many softcore
So instead
porn.
of second unit shooting it, now it's going to be the gentleman's.
It's going to be, this is his
gentleman's
moment.
back catalogue, which can be used for any. Wow.
That's right.
I had to send reference photos for the prosthetic penis. That was a weird email.
Yeah,
It's just like,
you're like
I was like,
making
hi,
breakfast for your
happy
kids.
Saturday, everybody.
Yeah.
Where did you find your photos?
I went to gentleman.com.
Has anyone else ever gotten a note from legal that was wild? This is I can't get over this.
Constant.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
you must have
pages. Yeah. Pages of them. Yeah.
What's the craziest one?
Oh, I mean, it's really hard to imagine. I mean, it's names that drive you crazy. Yeah. You can't ever clear any names. You spend a lot of time thinking about names, and then you get back like, no, you can use.
It has to be John Lavender. No, I'm not naming him that.
It's the only one that's cleared in the United States.
We had a note. Deborah Vance was on tour and she saw a flea market or a garage sale, a yard sale, and she stopped to buy a Chippendale tall boy chest. Yeah. And we were told that the scrolling might be protected by the estate of the person that carved the chest in 1820. So we couldn't use it. Yeah, so that was a hard legal note. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
It's funny. It's funny. We used it anyway. I think we got around it. I think we pushed back, and it was okay.
In the interest of moving away from penises, Stephen, Adolescence it's only 4 episodes. It's about one of the darkest subject matters imaginable. It's filmed like an art house feature. It doesn't scream commercial hit, yet it is like the biggest streaming show in the UK ever. It's the first to top the charts. I think as of this week, it surpassed Stranger Things as the most watched English language title on Netflix. I mean, what is the lesson from that kind of surprise success? Because this really grabbed people.
I think, look, if I'm really honest, it's a colloquial story It's set, we were having this conversation just a minute ago. It's set in a fictitious place up north. We were true to the subject. It was made with honesty. It was made with integrity. And we never, and I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, shape or form, but we didn't make it for it to be successful. We were under no obligation neither to make it so it was successful. Like I said, we made it with a lot of passion, a lot of love, and we were true to the story that we were telling. We made a little gem. We made a lovely little gem, and we had the most beautiful, glorious experience. Every single member of the cast and every single member of the crew. We had a wonderful summer. It was like a summer holiday. It was just a joyous occasion. Look, you know, we kind of threw the rule book out the window. We only done 2 takes a day, you know. So it was a wonderful experience. It was a performance, but we didn't know what would happen when we released it, and we just threw this beautiful little gem into what we thought was a pond, and it created a tsunami. I think it just caught something in the zeitgeist, and you know, a lot of parents really related to it. When we made it at the very beginning, you know, when I had the idea and I was explaining it to Jack, one of the main things, the overall objective was that I hoped it would create conversation with parents and children. And that was all we were asking for. Do you know what I mean? To maybe, art is subjective, and you know, we made something with honesty and with truth, and you know, it's a scary situation because, like I explained before, when we were kids, we didn't have the internet. When I was upstairs in my room, I was either drawing pictures or, do you know, playing with my Star Wars figures. I didn't have the possibility to reach and talk to people across the other end of the world, let alone, you know, the end of my street. So we wanted to look at that, and I think, you know, it just resonated. For whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not a magician. I have no idea. But I think it was just because it was a simple story told with truth, and it was about human condition. Do you know what I mean? It was about us as a society and looking at all of those aspects, like I mentioned earlier on. But I don't know, there was no magic formula. We just had the most glorious time making it. And I think that's really all you can do. Do you know what I mean? We skipped to work. We had a wonderful time. It was a heavy subject matter, but we had a lot of fun.
I think it's also trust the audience. And I think to your point is that there's a lot of time that we spend talking about, is this going to work or not work? The truth is, write something that you really care about, that you feel with honesty and integrity, and trust that the audience is intelligent and that they have empathy, and they will respond and they'll show up when they see that honesty in the material. So the audience is very sophisticated, very visually sophisticated, very narratively sophisticated. And I think we can trust them a lot more to come with us.
It's having that respect for your audience as well. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to spoon feed them all the time.
But in finding such a big audience, I'm wondering how this has changed the volume and the nature of the incoming calls you get. I mean, this has been a pretty high point in your career.
Yeah, of course. But it was also the high point for all of us as a collective. Do you know what I mean? It was a team game. Yeah. What we did, you know, acting and making something, it's not a game of golf. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of people involved, and the crew and everybody, you know, I mean, the amount of people that it goes into a production, as we all know, you know, it's phenomenal. But for that particular thing, we were all on board, and we all jumped on a train, and we didn't get off it till it stopped, and everybody gave it 110%. Like I said, it was the most unique way of working. We did 2 takes a day. Ultimately, we set out, and the way we worked as well, we rehearsed for a week with the script. Just the actors and Phil, our wonderful director, and Jack and myself, we worked with that script for the whole week, and it was tight, and everybody knew what they were saying, why they were saying it. We all understood the subtext. And then we had a wonderful week of creating a ballet, basically, of choreographing where the camera was going and the technique. And then the week after that, you shoot, and you did 2 takes a day. So ultimately, the overall idea was to have 10 takes at the end of the week. That wasn't always the case. I think for episodes 3 and 4 and episode 2, they were all the last takes that we ever used. So for episode 4, we used take 14, which is the very final take. So it was just a wonderful experience. Do you know what I mean?
How many, if you did 14 takes of the last episode, how many did you get all the way through?
Maybe about 10. Yeah, just maybe 10, I think it was. Because there was some kind of stops, technical elements, like if the cup wasn't there, I tried to carry on, but that affected something else.
Yeah.
And that was just a simple mistake. Matt, I won't mind me saying, one time as we're going into the house, he's backing up and the door was shut, so we banged it straight in. So we have to go again.
Yeah.
But thankfully, we're only like 4 or 5 minutes into the take. And you can imagine the energy is palpable. No one wants to drop that ball. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, a 1 minute oneer is stressful when it gets to you and then moves on, much less 14. I mean, I also remark at all of the actors, even the background actors, are so committed and so good and are so on. It's such a well-built world. I mean, did you audition all of the background as well? Did they all read for those roles?
We did. Most the actors who were the kids in the school, most of them, we auditioned all of those.
Wow.
But then another wonderful idea again, which was, that was part of the production elements and Phil and Mark as well. What we kind of did was the school we used, 150 kids, it's their school.
Wow.
So they had ownership of it, you know what I mean? It was their school. Yeah. So it was like, just go to class. You're like, okay. And when you heard the fire alarm, because we walked around with the headmaster, we went right through the school. When they have a fire alarm, they go to this point. So one of those kids knew where they were going.
But to also not look at the lens, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's just like for those kids. I mean, really remarkable.
It was a wonderful, wonderful thing that we created, and that little place, Pontefract, it really affected the town, and every single person felt like they had an ownership of it. Do you know what I mean? It was, I don't know what else to say apart from it. It's just, it was a glorious experience.
I would have been so afraid that if I were like on the crew, that
You have to be in season 2. You have to be in, like, have a 2-line role. And we'll see how you do.
I would go to bed like having nightmares and I would trip. Anyway, sorry.
Brett and Liz, you're both here for comedies about death that are very funny, but also have incredibly heartbreaking moments. They work in their genre. There's been a lot of critiques about like what is a comedy right now. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you walk the line in your writer's room of not like veering too far into one direction or another? Like, how do you strike a tonal balance like that? Because it is a tightrope walk.
Up to you. I mean, look, me and Bill Lawrence and Jason Segel co-created the show, and it was always like a strict rule that this is a comedy first. We have a lot of jokes in it, and we have an amazing writers' room who pitch a million jokes. I think not consciously, but I think that basically we write it as a drama and then fill it with jokes. I sort of think that's it. And I think in terms of the tone, it's like instinctual, or we have a shared agreement of what is the right amount of funny and sad. And when something's too sad, it won't be funny again. And if it's too funny, if it's too broad, we can't come back. You know what I mean? There's a middle ground, and it isn't that hard to find, because I think it is how we see the world. Anyway, it's funny and sad. You know what I mean? Is that fair? You tell me.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm speaking for both of us.
He was speaking for both. Yeah.
It's clear. Really good answer. Please.
Yeah. I think I really nailed that.
Please, Liz.
Mindy.
Oh, no.
No, you're right. She doesn't want to. Mindy, you.
It was so weird when you spoke for Liz.
I know.
That was rough.
Why did you silence her? Were you silenced?
I know.
It's really fun.
You feel comfortable with that answer, right? I thought you were.
Yes, I'm totally.
Oh my gosh. Mindy, you were an actress. You were a household name, but you've done a
Thank you.
remarkable job.
Once
Mm-hmm.
someone mentioned, no, thank you. Thank you.
You've done a remarkable job of avoiding appearing in the series that you write and produce since the Mindy Project. And that can't be from a lack of executive pressure in certain scenarios, because like you on camera can help sell a show. So how did you establish those boundaries to keep writing and producing largely separate from your acting work?
You know, what I liked about the way you asked the question is that you made it sound like a conscious decision. And the truth, I love performing. I after we did Never Have I Ever, which was a show literally about an Indian family in Southern California, and I wasn't in it, and I liked how it came out, I was like, well, if I'm not in that show, where it'd be just very easy to incorporate me, then maybe I shouldn't be in the shows, but it's not like I don't think about it. And especially on Running Point, the cast is so fun and the set is so fun. It's like Kate Hudson, I've admired her for I almost said when I was a kid, but that made her sound older than me.
You were the same age.
And I was a young child watching her and her comedies. No, but she's so much older than me. And I looked up to her as a mentor. No, we're exactly the same age. But her and Drew Tarver and Justin Theroux, and I love the cast and I get jealous. I'll watch it. And Ike Barinholtz and David Stassen, who isn't a performer, Ike and I, he gets to go do the studio, which is another amazing show, but I just sit there wishing I could be on screen. So to answer your question, I'm mad about it and I wish I could do it. No, I think, and this is not true, but in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe it's classier that I'm not doing it. But there have been times, I don't know, Liz, if you feel, Tracey, you feel this way because you both performed, where you want to Alfred Hitchcock it, where I come out at the beginning and talk about the themes of the show and then disappear.
Yeah.
I'd like to be in it.
Paul, I really want to talk about Cher.
Oh, okay, great. Let's get into it.
Your attempts to get Cher on Hacks prompted her to reject you with I don't want to do it.
Yes.
And then
She was very straightforward. Yeah. No. We asked her in season, and I actually told the story wrong before. We asked her in season 3, and then again this season. And we were told that she has a ice cream brand called Cherlato, Cher's Gelato. And her manager said, look, if you write in Cherlato, she's in. And so we said, great. And so we wrote a commercial for Cherlato. Deborah Vance was going to go to the Cherlato factory. She was going to taste all the Cherlato. In our world, there was. And it was gorgeous. And it was great. Deborah was going to be forced to wear a hairnet. She didn't want to, but it was great, And then at the end, Cher was going to say, I just want you to get extra calories. I'm not doing your show because you stole my backup dancers in the 80s. So
great.
F off. Anyway, we got a pass. And we get a lot of passes that are very nice. People are like, oh, love the show, but I'm shooting out of town.
Who else has passed? Can I know?
I passed.
Actually, this wasn't for Hacks, but we did get Javier Bardem passed in the best way. He said, I cannot say yes right now, which is Spanish for no.
Yes.
So, but we said to Cher's manager, is there any feedback? Can we change the script? Anything we should know? And she said, yeah, she emailed me and I quote, I don't want to do it. She just didn't want to do it, which guess what? If anybody can say I don't want to do it, it's Cher. So, yeah. But,
so in writing the I don't want to do it into the season
show.
4
Yes.
about her doing the show within show,
yes.
Are you still courting her? Is that a signal to her? Or are you just having fun?
We're just having fun. We're just having fun. We're just trying to be truthful, and represent the world we live in. Honestly.
You used what you said.
That's exactly right. We use the truth. It's about truth and comedy. And so we said we're going to use Cher's words. We're going to honor her. We're not going to silence her. We're going to honor her.
Did you ask her permission?
No.
The celebrity cameos this season were very good.
Well, thank you.
Kristen Bell,
Yes.
Jimmy.
Yes.
It's really great.
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett.
Yes. All of whom were very, very kind to do it. Yeah. Yeah. They said yes, which was great, which I like more than no. Yeah.
Who else has had a guest star ovation go wrong or not come through?
Not on this show. I mean, we
We can
4
talk about
seasons-
your whole career.
Yeah, I mean, this show was like in such an incredible. We just felt so lucky. Tina created it with us, and so was starring in it. So it obviously drew a lot of great people. But we got Steve Carell and Coleman Domingo and Will Forte and Carrie Kinney. That it was the greatest cast I've ever written anything for. It was like such. It just felt like such a exciting opportunity to be able to see these great actors do great comedy. I have written on other shows. I did a reboot of Saved by the Bell where we were trying to get a I feel like this was maybe like a directive we got from Universal that we were trying to get someone from The Voice. And it was like, we couldn't get Adam Levine. And so we'll take someone else. And it kept going down until finally they were like, okay, no one wants to do it. We can get you the chair. And honestly, we were like, okay. So wait, but guys, so we wrote it in that it was like the chair from I don't even remember what the scene was. The chair from The Voice is there. And we had to build, the chairs from The Voice are very heavy. And we had to build a special stage that was like maybe a little expensive so it could hold the chair. And Mikey, the day of, we got a call from The Voice. The chair is not coming. The chair is not coming. The chair canceled on me. And I don't remember when we had the day of. It was like my darkest moment in Hollywood.
Real diva behavior.
From the chair. But look at me now. Who cares, chair?
The chair was on a bender.
Yeah. She is out of control.
Tracey, we were speaking with your collaborator, Tina Fey, and she said that one of your strengths as a writer is that you have a great feel for what's corny and that you're quick to call bullshit. So I'm wondering, how do you deploy that kind of rejection in the room? Because corny and bullshit they could be interpreted.
Yeah, it's rude to say that in a room to Tina Fey. I think that's a really nice compliment. I've worked with her for a really long time. She gave me my first job writing on 30 Rock and produced a show I did for Emmy. Like, we've worked together for a long time, and I think she and I really know each other and trust each other. And I think with this show, especially, it was a new kind of mode of writing, and we wanted it to be really more truthful than other stuff we've written, and to feel really human, and to feel really observational about marriage and long friendships. And we wanted people to watch it and be like, oh my God, my husband and I are exactly like this. And I think that only works if you are writing things that feel really true. And so I think that's something in the room I think we all try to do, is this the funniest? Is this is this like just a weird choice? Or is this the choice that feels like it will make people watching be like, oh, that resonates, that's me, So I think that impulse is something I try to do. And I think that's a compliment, I think.
One thing you all have in common is that you're working right now.
Yes.
A lot of people aren't. I'm wondering, what's the most worrying conversation that you've had with an executive this year? Or in the last year, I guess.
I don't want to name names, but every time I suggest shooting in Los Angeles, somebody says, we don't even want to budget it. You can't afford to shoot. It's become a truism that you can't do it. And that's not true. I mean, we're shooting the Pitt in Los Angeles, and so those are the kind of things that that you have to go to a foreign country. There's wonderful work that's being done but it's very difficult in Los Angeles for people. So yeah, there's a general sense that you can't afford to do it. So we have to prove to everybody again that we can.
And New York too,
and New York,
you're
same thing.
penalized for shooting in America.
Should there not be tax incentives?
They're just not enough. Yeah. So I think that's the thing that's worried me the most, is that we may hollow out a lot of our really talented crew who are moving and leaving town, and
Because they can't work in the place where that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any
At
sense.
all.
Yeah.
In Hollywood.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in New York, it's and now even Atlanta, there's not enough work in Atlanta. Everything's kind of moving out. So, and we're going to hollow out the industry of a lot of the people that we actually really need, the craftspeople, the talent that we need. So that's been the most concerning thing that I've heard this year.
I mean, not to double down on the darkness, but it was the Milken Institute just this week claimed this trend of like production loss in Los Angeles is like at the significant risk of becoming irreversible at this point. And so the four of you who are shooting your shows in Los Angeles, what's your advice for like producers trying to like economically leverage this with all this pressure to not shoot here, outside of just like being like Kate Hudson's the star and
She wants to be
she
here.
wants to shoot here.
I think there's, as writers, those of us who are very involved in the writing of the shows, is we have to be responsible to how we write to allow you to actually shoot. And to shoot in responsible ways where you can then do it financially that makes sense. So it kind of starts with us in saying we're going to design a show that we can actually, what's the budget that you would like to do it for? We want to do it here because we have the craftspeople here or in New York, or and so let us design to that number and write to that number so that we can actually do the show that we want to do in the place. Because you've got, you know, in the Pitt as an example, we had 325 speaking parts in the first 15 episodes. So you're not going to do that in Atlanta or Toronto. You need to be someplace where you have 300 and, you know, or 750 actors that you can bring in for those parts. Same thing with London, same thing with New York. You have a pool of people who are talented. And so we design shows back into what you can actually do in the places that you want to shoot them that allow people to have their families and actors to have their families and to not be on the road the whole time. And, you know, because it's very difficult for a crew and cast to, you know, not be at home.
Yeah.
To me, what I think is a little bit scary about the industry now is that how difficult it is, I think, to greenlight shows without established stars. And to me, breaking through is so hard. And we had a little window there where we were seeing a lot of shows where it was like the premise or the script was so good and there was enough money flowing that you get those greenlit. And some of my favorite experiences on stage have been like, you know, The Office didn't have that many, like Steve was known, but everyone was pretty unknown when we did the remake of The Office. And like two of my more recent shows have been that way. Like Running Point is great because it has so many well-known established stars, but I think it's so fun discovering talent and discovering people that don't normally get seen. And I think that's just becoming a little bit harder.
I think it's important and it's integral that we create opportunities. You have to create opportunities. Do you know what I mean? And you should be able to do that in the place where you're working. You have to be able to create those opportunities for young people, not just young people now, but, you know, people of our own age as well who are still struggling, who are still on that kind of daily trying to find a job. You have to, it's integral. You have to support those people and you have to create those opportunities. I love your idea. So then technically what would we do? Would we go to a studio and say, okay, so what's your budget for this thing?
What do you want
Would
to
you
spend?
present it first and
When
say,
you
this
sell
is
it,
what we
do you
have?
want it to be? And then let me decide how I figure out where to shoot.
I'm just in the middle of that right now for New York, and you know, it's just continue to like. But if you shoot here, you're gonna get this many more days, and
But
you know,
I'm going to
just kind of
have
like sticking to
craftspeople
it.
that are going to. You
Yeah.
can't separate out the quality of the people that you can hire to do the job from the eventual success of the show. And I think there's a disconnect in between sometimes between that. And you know, when you're in a place where you can call upon a number of really talented people, you're going to have a better show. It is part of the mix that gives you the show that you want to have.
It's also that catch-22 situation, though, to go back to what you're saying. Yes, you need a star, but how are you going to allow these other people to try and become stars, which I think is a dying thing anyway, personally. It's about the quality of the actor, and it should always be about the quality of the actor. Do you know what I mean? But how do we elevate those people to give them the opportunity to play those roles? We have to, surely.
And it is so difficult now when so many things are subscriber-based and they don't have DVD sales to pay for a season of TV, and they have subscribers only, and they need a name that people recognize. And it's really, one of the scariest things that was said to me was a writer of ours who's a comedy writer and has been writing on Hacks and is fantastic. Their agent said to them, what about writing a drama? Because it's easier in some ways to sell a drama because comedy isn't always international. It doesn't always get the same audience that dramas can get. And that to me, as someone who makes a show about making comedy, is really scary, because I think a lot of my favorite performers are comedians that were broken doing comedy, you know? Comedy Central doesn't exist. They don't do originals anymore, and that broke so many people. So that to me is a really scary thing too. And it all goes back to the fact that now corporations can't make a small profit, they have to grow their profit every year. And it's absolutely obscene that the only way to do that is to outsource labor and to push down on the art. So I think it's all like part and parcel of the same thing, which is, you know, this was an industry that was lucrative for a century and made money, made people money, and people shared in the profit of that money. And now it's a very different industry that has to grow every single year so that the shareholders and the stock value goes up. It's really it is a scary thing. And I think it's not just in show business, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is obvious, but it is scary.
I also think network pilots used to really like be, you know, even the ones that didn't go, it was like you found a lot of young actors. And
Yeah.
like that was like and you know, I've had plenty that didn't go, but like that was my entry into it, you know.
At least you were given the opportunity.
Yeah, and I learned a lot. And
I do think it's incumbent upon all of us now who've had some success to remember how we got to that success and how it came up, and to make certain that we're bringing along and training and giving opportunities. And you know, that's an essential part of the job is, you know, we've got, you know, on the Pitt, we've got Noah, who's fantastic. And he was that person who could drive it forward. And then everybody else has either been on a lot of things, but you don't know who they are, or they were brand new and came out of the theater. And now we've made, I don't know about stars. I don't know what a star is or not, but we're started their careers. That's part of our responsibility for writers, for technicians, for actors. We're in that place now where it's our responsibility and other people did it for us. Right. So.
We have to wrap things up in a sec, but I'm wondering, what's the professional call you all still dream of getting?
I want to be on the Gilded Age as one of those catty women that's like, they're not rich enough to talk to. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to be, I don't think Indian people were in the United States then. It wouldn't make any sense, but I like one of those Julian Bellows dramas.
Yeah.
To be one of the people that's gossiping about the other people.
There could have been a secret Indian Astor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, so I don't know if you feel this way, but I love things that I don't understand, like how they were made. So, you know, like, you know, particularly with the Pitt and then with Adolescence, you watch it and you're like, you feel the giddiness of like, oh, I think I'm learning something. And, you know, that you can get in a rut, especially in comedy world, where you're like, oh, is this feel comfortable and familiar? And I've done this before. And so to me, you know, what you're doing with your creative partners and you or like Julian Bellows, you're like, wow, like, you know, anything period, I find that very exciting.
I'd like to have a call that started with, we have no notes. So let's
You
just,
got notes? You got a lot of notes?
what do you think happens? Yeah, of course I get a lot
Oh,
of
that
notes.
makes me feel
Oh,
great.
pages of notes.
Because I'm always on a notes club and like, fucking John Wells doesn't get any
Oh,
notes.
it never stops.
I'm
Never stops.
I'm sorry for you and selfishly happy.
I do think about you a lot, like when I'm failing in the writer's room and I'm like, John Wells wouldn't do this.
Oh, no, you fail all the time. That's how you know the writer's room is kind of working as you fail. Because eventually, if you fail enough in the writer's room, then something,
Yeah, but
at
doesn't
that
it?
moment of
yeah.
utter despair.
I know, but you feel do
You're
you
like,
really
that's-
feel that? Like you still feel that when you
Oh,
when
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't
Never
break
goes away.
something?
Never
But it's
goes
hard to
away.
remember that. You always
It's
get back
so
there and
hard.
then you're like, and
It's not gonna
trusting
work
the
this
process can
time.
be really hard because you have to get to the despair
You gotta
for the
get to
breakthrough, and it's so hard. It's so hard to
Like the
get there.
third time you can't break something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go home,
The
and you
re-break.
go like, maybe I'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else will come up with an idea.
Should we talk about something else? for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we all suck right now. We're all terrible.
They're not joining in. They're like,
They're like,
They know.
No, we suffer. It's the art of living, suffering.
But
so-
people in the UK don't talk about it. Them
Oh,
suffering,
you're
you know? Yeah.
Right. No one sucks. Real quick, last question. What is the last series that you watched that made you really jealous?
I don't know about jealous. Not jealous. Not jealousy. I watched it. No,
Curious?
your
Curious.
series,
Oh,
your
curious.
series
Yeah.
I watched, and I was blown away by the beauty of it and how funny it was and how wonderful it was and to like I said, that final sequence will stick with me because it was so beautifully done. And it's stories that have been told by my wife and by my father, who was there when my mum took her last breaths, and how they described it to me. I got to see that, so
I think I agree that it's not really jealous so much as I actually feel like, thank you. I get to end of something, I just go like, I don't feel like, oh, I wish I could have done that so much as I feel like I want to watch things and I want to love them.
John, I'm jealous of every television show I watch. You feel this way too.
It's just this feeling of like, I mean, that's in my, I was there when my father died, and that's exactly what happened. I told you in the hallway outside. That's exactly what happened.
But watching TV is like watching auditions. When you're on the other side, you're like, oh, they hate me. And you're like, I just want it to be good.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I watch TV, I'm like, I just want this to be good. I think when jealousy comes in is when something that you think is not that great is getting a lot of praise, right? That's a whole separate thing, which is like, why are they saying that's so good? It's like just okay. But, yeah, I mean, okay, the question is the last thing that makes us jealous. Is that what you said?
No, just the last show you watched that you were just like, damn.
Obviously we're in this time where the wonder of watching Mike White, right, and do The White Lotus is so amazing. And I remember watching Enlightened 10 or 12 years ago, which is just so beautiful. And it's about difficult women, which is something I love to watch, but it had so much humanity and it was so funny. Like Laura Dern in that role, she's won a million awards for so many roles, but Enlightened really was something, so it really knocked me out.
I just wanted to say that thank you for everyone's work at this table. But I was also the scene or the episode after the shooting. I guess like both of your shows, just as a parent, I was like, it felt like new ways of getting people to pay attention to things that people desperately need to pay attention to. And that episode after the school shooting, the way that you didn't kind of like proselytize about guns, or that it was just the actual human cost of these events. And it was nonstop in this kind of like perfect way of just like, this is what this is. I was like so blown away by that. And yeah, I feel grateful. I don't feel jealous.
I think grateful is a beautiful place to end this. Yeah. Thank you all so much for doing this. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for watching. This has been fantastic.